it's very lonely. Being a woman in this industry, in my opinion, is extremely lonely.
Miss Phyllis Hyman.
Phyllis Hyman?
Phyllis Hyman.
Phyllis Hyman!
That America's biggest new star will be Miss Phyllis Hyman.
There was something about her. Before she even sang a note, you felt it, a kind of presence that lingered in the air like a haunting memory. And when she did sing, my God, it was velvet and fire all at once. She could hold a note that made time itself stand still. But behind that extraordinary voice was a woman who was quietly falling apart. Her name was Phyllis Hyman, 6 feet tall, stunningly beautiful, impossibly gifted, and profoundly misunderstood. She wasn't the kind of artist the music industry knew how to market. She didn't fit into their neat little boxes. Not quite R&B, not quite jazz, never quite pop. She was her own category, and that made her both extraordinary and expendable. This is the story of a woman who reached for the stars while carrying the weight of the world, a woman who could captivate a crowd of thousands and still feel alone the moment the lights dimmed. This is the tragic story of Phyllis Hyman. Before the applause, before the Broadway lights and record deals, Phyllis Linda Hyman was just a little girl trying to survive in a house that felt like anything but home. She was born on July 6, 1949, in Philadelphia, but her story truly begins in Pittsburgh's St. Clair Village housing projects. Her father, Philip Hyman, was a World War II veteran and railroad worker, often gone, and when he was home, he drank to numb the pain of his declining health. Her mother, Louise, battled mental illness and the crushing weight of raising 7 children. 7. All crammed into a home that barely had enough love to go around. Phyllis was the eldest, and that meant responsibilities, adult responsibilities, far too early. While other girls her age played hopscotch or dreamed of fairy tales, Phyllis was already learning how to lead, how to protect, and how to bottle up pain. Her sister Jeannie often stepped into the motherly role, but Phyllis? Phyllis became the enforcer, fiercely protective, sharp-tongued, and already tired of the chaos that surrounded her. She commanded respect and fear, even from her siblings. That fire would one day light up stages, but in those early years it only made her feel more isolated. She was tall, awkward, and wildly intelligent. She devoured books and rarely listened to music at home. In fact, Phyllis later said, "I didn't have a record player. I was more into reading and television. Music just wasn't a thing in my house." Still, something in her voice, when she did sing, stopped people cold. She stood 6 feet tall by the time she was a teenager, with a voice that sounded like it had lived 1,000 lives. But it wasn't her dream, not yet. What she really wanted was to grow up, be independent, rich, childless, and free. A woman who answered to no one. That dream, like so many others, would prove much harder to hold on to than she imagined. By the time Phyllis graduated from high school, the chaos at home had carved her into someone who looked strong on the outside, but was cracking on the inside. Her tall frame and commanding voice gave her the illusion of confidence, but inside she still doubted everything. She joined a local group called The Sounds of Ebony. It was just a vocal trio, nothing fancy, but it gave her a way to test the waters of performing. Still, the spotlight made her shrink. She often admitted she hated being the center of attention. The same woman who would one day electrify a crowd could barely face one back then. Even when she earned a scholarship to Robert Morris College, the first ever awarded for music, she hesitated. It was her choir teacher, David Tamber, who saw the fire in her. He didn't just train her voice. He shaped her image, helped fix her teeth, taught her how to work a room. His wife even helped dress her. Together, they saw the star within her long before she did. But it wasn't long before Phyllis walked away from it all. College life didn't feel right. The weight of expectations felt too heavy. So she took a secretary job and started drinking more. Pills followed. So did the emotional numbness that would become a quiet companion for much of her life. Still, fate has a funny way of calling you back. One day, a touring band called the New Directions needed a singer, and someone told them about this statuesque girl from Pittsburgh. She joined the group and hit the road, singing across cities, sleeping in hotels, fighting through stage fright at every stop. The crowd might have clapped, but inside, Phyllis never believed she was good enough. And yet, someone else did. During a cruise ship performance with another band, she heard a voice from the cabin next door. His name was Larry Alexander, smooth, magnetic, ambitious. And when Phyllis met him, she saw the kind of love and support she'd always longed for. Larry was the first man who truly believed in her talent. He didn't just become her boyfriend, he became her manager, her protector, her partner in building the dream. And for a while, it worked. In 1974, she formed her own band, the PH Factor, and began playing Miami lounges, mixing jazz, funk, Latin, whatever the mood called for. Phyllis was finally beginning to bloom. But the music industry? It was about to take notice, and not all attention is good. By 1975, Phyllis had the look, the voice, and a growing fan base, but she still didn't have a record deal. That changed when she met Sid Maurer, who signed her to his label, Desert Moon Records. It sounded like a dream, until it wasn't. From the start, Phyllis clashed with the label's vision. Sid and her then-manager boyfriend, Larry Alexander, wanted her to follow the wave of trendy disco hits, to sing whatever was radio-friendly. But that wasn't her style. Phyllis didn't want to chase hits. She wanted to craft art. She preferred the raw intimacy of jazz, the soul of R&B, the kind of music that left a mark long after the beat faded. The sessions felt overproduced, forced. The magic of her voice drowned in commercial polish. She did what she was told, but it showed in the recordings. The one single they pushed, "Baby, I'm Gonna Love You," barely cracked the charts. And for a woman who was beginning to realize her worth, mediocrity felt like a slow death. By the end of the year, she and the PH Factor left Miami and headed to New York City, the city of dreams and detours. There, a chance meeting would change everything. One night, at a gig in Rust Brown's nightclub, Norman Connors, a composer and jazz drummer known for spotting vocal talent, caught her set. The moment he heard her voice, he knew. This wasn't just another club singer. This was something rare. He offered her a spot on his next album. Phyllis, hesitant but intrigued, agreed. She didn't know it then, but this would be her first real break. Norman handed her a song that had been recorded before, but few remembered. "Betcha by Golly Wow." And when Phyllis sang it, something magical happened. The pain, the grace, the depth. It was all there, raw, honest, unapologetic. That track, and two others, launched her into the spotlight. Suddenly, the industry was paying attention. She toured with Norman, sang duets with Michael Henderson, and for the first time, her name was on a record that charted. But with new visibility came new pressure. Norman began pushing Phyllis and Larry to leave Desert Moon and sign with Buddha Records, where he had more influence. He promised creative freedom, a label that would finally let her do things her way. And Phyllis, craving control more than fame, said yes. It was supposed to be a new chapter. Instead, it became the start of a complicated war between art and industry. Phyllis Hyman signed with Buddha Records hoping for artistic freedom, and, to be fair, she got it. But what she didn't get was the machine, the marketing, the muscle to push her voice into the mainstream. In 1977, her self-titled debut was released. She worked closely with Larry Alexander, who co-produced the album. It featured the haunting single "Loving You, Losing You," a song that barely scratched the surface of what she was capable of. The critics were kind. The charts? Not so much. The album peaked at number 49 on the R&B charts, a disappointment. But the real sting came from the industry's indifference. They didn't know how to package her. She wasn't bubbly like disco queens. She wasn't slick like pop stars. And Phyllis, ever the perfectionist, refused to mold herself to fit. In 1978, she released her sophomore album, Sing a Song, but just as it was hitting shelves, Buddha Records went under. No promotion, no radio push, just silence. Phyllis was furious and exhausted. That's when Clive Davis came calling. Clive Davis had built his career on hitmakers, Aretha Franklin, Barry Manilow, Earth, Wind and Fire. And now he wanted Phyllis. But Clive didn't offer her freedom. He offered visibility with conditions. Her revamped album, Somewhere in My Lifetime, featured production from Barry Manilow and reused several songs from her scrapped Buddha project. It was glossier, more polished, but less her. It peaked at number 15 on the R&B charts. Not bad, but Clive wanted more. He wanted a pop star. Phyllis didn't. She fought him on everything: image, production, collaborators. She wanted Quincy Jones. He said no. He wanted commercial. She wanted timeless. It was oil and water. In 1979, she released You Know How to Love Me, a lush, beautifully produced album that gave her one of her most enduring tracks. It hit number 10 on the R&B charts, but again, she didn't break into pop. Not fully. Clive grew cold. Phyllis grew colder. In 1981, Phyllis did something unexpected. Broadway. She starred in Sophisticated Ladies, a musical review of Duke Ellington's work. Her performance? Electrifying. She was nominated for a Tony Award and won a Theatre World Award for Best Newcomer. But backstage was chaos. She was late. She was moody. Sometimes she partied too hard the night before. Castmates adored her voice, but feared her instability. Phyllis was now dancing between two worlds, celebrated on stage, but increasingly isolated off it. Her marriage to Larry crumbled. The relationship had gone from passionate to poisonous, and with it went her sense of trust. Still, Clive saw the press from Broadway and pushed a new album, Can't We Fall in Love Again? The title track hit number 9 on the R&B charts, her first top 10. But instead of feeling proud, Phyllis felt hollow. She was being molded again, and something inside her started to splinter. Phyllis was often described as intimidating, tall, elegant, fierce, but those closest to her said she was just lonely. She had lovers, Larry, singer Christopher Williams, even a quiet, romantic bond with a woman named Martha. But love never seemed to last. It wasn't that she couldn't be loved. It was that she couldn't trust it. By the mid-1980s, she was struggling. She posed for men's magazines, losing endorsements in the process. Her addiction deepened: pills, alcohol, and now cocaine. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but the stigma back then kept her from fully embracing treatment. And the more Clive pushed her aside to make room for his new star, Whitney Houston, the more Phyllis unraveled. There's a story Whitney once told about meeting Phyllis for the first time. Phyllis looked her up and down and said, "So, you're the one." Whitney, cool as ever, replied, "Yes, I'm the one." That moment said it all. In 1986, Phyllis released her album Living All Alone under Philadelphia International Records. The title track was haunting and autobiographical. Her voice was richer, deeper, but the wear and tear was starting to show. She tried rehab, she tried love, she tried music again. She toured, she sang, she smiled, but something was broken, and she knew it. In public, she was poised. In private, she was unraveling. Friends say she talked about death often. She would joke, "I'm tired of fighting," except it didn't sound like a joke. On June 30th, 1995, just 6 days before her 46th birthday, Phyllis Hyman sent her assistant out to run errands. She told them she planned to sunbathe on the roof. Instead, she walked to her bedroom, locked the door, and took a fatal dose of sleeping pills. She left behind a note. It read simply, "I'm tired. I'm tired. Those of you that I love know who you are. May God bless you." She died as quietly as she lived loudly. A voice silenced, a soul at rest. Today, we remember Phyllis not just for her music, but for her truth. She wasn't made for the machine. She was too bold, too raw, too human. She didn't chase fame, she chased freedom. And in a world that wanted her to shrink, she stood tall until she could no longer carry the weight. Her voice lives on, in every note of "You Know How to Love Me," in every whisper of "Living All Alone," in every soul still searching for where they belong. Phyllis Hyman wasn't just a singer. She was a storm, a story, a woman who tried to hold on even when the world made her let go.